Hello, friends, and welcome to Over the Top Rope on Backbreaker Media, the flagship podcast of the Win Column Sports Network, and now proudly sponsored by Beercade YEG. So don't forget to head to Beercade for all of your WWE pay-per-views and for Over the Top Rope Live, featuring us, the Brothers of Discussion, your hosts of Over the Top Rope. I am Spencer Love. Joining me, as always, on OTTR, Hayden Love. Hayden, thanks for joining me again, man.
Thank you for having me, Spencer.
Love doing this with you.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, by this point, it's not a privilege. Like, you are the co-host of this thing. We are very, very proud to be talking about independent wrestling for the most part, dabbling in the WWE, talking about really whatever we want to talk about here. But the focus for today's podcast, Hayden, as it has been for the last little bit, just because it is one of the biggest subjects in wrestling, and our big thought of the day is a lot to do with All Elite Wrestling, the recently announced promotion from Cody and the Young Bucks. I'm very, very excited. Like, I don't think there's much else we can say about it. I just always have to preface my comments on AEW with how excited I am for it.
That makes dose of us, Spencer. And even just based off of the Jacksonville rally, the list of signings that we've got there, I think you and I have talked ad nauseum.
100%, which we actually learned thanks to Alex Trebek, good Canadian of Jeopardy. Ad nauseum does mean until seasickness, so we have talked a ton about the recent signings for AEW and the announced signings for AEW. The only one that we haven't talked about that has been confirmed was Jungle Boy Nate Coy, but we'll get into that in a little bit here. But, you know, Hayden, with the recent sort of rumored, all but confirmed announcements that these guys are leaving WWE, AEW is starting to more consistently announce its signing. Ring of Honor is picking up big names and retaining big names like Bandito. Impact still has names like Jordan Grace, Tessa Blanchard under contract. I think that right now you're really starting to see the wild, wild west return to wrestling. So we're going to talk about it here in a bit because I know you chatted about it and brought the point up before we started this podcast that everything's rumored to air on different nights. But are we starting to see the Monday Night Wars returning? So Hayden, generally, what are your thoughts on the subject before we get into sort of the names that we're talking about here on this edition of Over the Top Rope?
It really is the Wild West at this point. Like it's a really shitty term. Don't get me wrong.
It's cliche, but like it's a cliche for a reason.
It's an apt descriptor,
100%,
especially at this point. It seems like a number of contracts are coming up or have just come up at this point. Like you said, Impact is retaining some talent, but like they just let Matt Seidel go, who's an absolutely fantastic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Evan Bourne. Well, they didn't even let him go. They didn't terminate his contract, but he just took off.
Yeah.
His contract came. He didn't resign. Trevor Lee just signed with NXT.
Has that been confirmed by the Fed?
But no, it's the same.
He announced it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he announced it at a house show.
Oh,
I'm surprised that he didn't show up at TakeOver Phoenix, to be perfectly honest.
I was very surprised that there were a number of names. Like, I haven't watched the full thing yet, so maybe wrong here, but I haven't seen anything. I was surprised Chelsea Green wasn't in the crowd, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of big signings. Even someone like Walter, one of the big NXT UK signings that's just come out. Surprised someone like him didn't appear in the crowd, even just to give a bit of the shine to that brand, which, you know, you talk about new brands, like it's a new old brand, but it's still something that's huge for the wrestling world in NXT UK.
And especially when you have your men's champion and your women's champion come over. Tony Storm and Pete Dunne were both in the crowd.
Yep.
So why that guy wouldn't tag along, but that's just got to be for personal reasons. He has a reputation of not liking to come to America for reasons aside from big events.
Yeah, from what you were telling me, that was the big reason that he signed with NXT UK specifically, is that he didn't want to leave the EU.
And it's
haha.
Well, either way, Spencer, shitty joke.
Come on, that was pretty good. That one's for the smart fans out there.
Yeah, that's for the politically tuned in fans.
We got a Brexit joke in here.
Absolutely, stuck it in.
An over the top rope first. Anyway, sorry.
But even that goes back to talent signings. And to touch on that even more, I haven't seen any of his work, to be perfectly honest. But they just reportedly, in the same manner as all of these signings, or 90% of the signings that we're talking about.
And rumored releases.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, but they picked up Ilya Dragunov, who's huge in Germany, WXW. But
that's going to be someone I'll have to check out.
No, absolutely. He's supposedly fantastic. 25. Cool. He's a guy that I've got on my list to check out. But when you go back to the USA, like you mentioned Ring of Honor, as well. They just picked up Rush, first guy that you mentioned. Don't know why his name is slipping my mind.
Bandito.
Bandito. There we go.
He's in for a huge 2019, man. And huge shout out to, again, as always, my friends from All In. Sam, Casey, Kate, what's up? Introduced me to Bandito at All In, and what a wrestler he is, man. He is a huge coup for Ring of Honor.
And he's a guy that that NXT and AEW were both actively trying to sign.
He was one of the first that I started to hear that sort of conversation about, is that there was a quote-unquote bidding war for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're going to start to see more of that, Hayden. Like, you talk about, so let's just bring him up. It's been confirmed by AEW in today's first edition of Road to Double or Nothing. Jungle Boy is signed with AEW All Elite Wrestling. Haven't really heard much on the contract end. Obviously, I don't think we would. It's not like we're insiders.
No.
We're just fans.
Yes.
And then the Wrestling Observer saying that Kylie Ray and Sammy Guevara have rumoredly signed with the promotion. So not sure how much truth there is to that. I know Uncle Dave may have a little bit more knowledge of the Young Bucks and Cody than the average person may, but he's also been horrendously wrong sometimes. I feel like we've never been as horrendously wrong as Meltzer has been, but
I think that's a challengeable statement.
I
think
excellently put.
I really think that we've messed up or dropped the ball or just had generally wrong opinions in the past.
I don't think you can have a wrong opinion.
Well,
I think when you're throwing something out as fact, the guy who inspired
Thoughts.
All In, Dave Meltzer, rumoredly.
Just got surgery on his hand. He really messed it up.
Man, I heard that. He broke his arm. That's going to be real tough. Like
8 weeks in a cast, dude.
That's going to kill the promotion.
It's going to kill him.
The
No
Wrestling
question.
Observer is going to die. I can't even say that, you know. I have never met Dave Meltzer. I do not know the man. I shouldn't even shit on his opinion because he's had some great opinions at some points. I should just stay right out of that hole.
Yeah.
Dave Meltzer debate. We're not here to ruffle any feathers, folks. We just like wrestling. So
Maybe just a lot more video content.
that's what I'll have to move to.
24-hour live stream of him just spouting off wrestling rumors.
But then you'll see him throw a bunch of pieces of paper in the air and just throw darts at it.
Yeah.
ACH is going to be main eventing. It's like a game of Clue. You know what I mean?
Who did what, where, and when?
Exactly.
Bang on.
So speaking of, Uncle Dave Meltzer saying Kylie Ray and Sammy Guevara are all but done deals. Again, using my air quotes here, which I'm really starting to realize is one of my overused phrases here in this podcast. Rumored to have signed with the AEW. Outside of that, I don't know of anybody who is supposed to be there. Again, there is a lot of talk about Kenny Omega, but there's a lot of talk about Kenny Omega going anywhere. I feel like without him being in the Royal Rumble, that to me would all but confirm he's not going to WWE. Is that your opinion as well?
It seems likely, but it also seems like AJ is going to have a feud coming out of this forthcoming Elimination Chamber as well. And legally, and I know that there were possible ways to work around it. Or who the hell am I kidding? I wouldn't know anything that goes into the back end on that side.
I took a business law class once, Hayden, so I'm more than qualified to talk about this.
I guess you are right.
Thank you.
But he legally couldn't have appeared at the Royal Rumble.
No. No. But I do feel like how would you debut him? I don't feel like giving him a run starting at the Elimination Chamber prior to WrestleMania is really doing a guy like that justice. No. I don't feel like that's not to shit on Elimination Chamber because I love the pay-per-view, but not the best way to debut a guy like Kenny Omega if he were to debut with WWE.
I agree.
So, speaking of WWE, Hayden, lots of rumors flying around there. I don't know even how confirmed these can be because there is always the chance that we're being worked or they're working a shoot, but you don't want to ever work yourself into a shoot when a work's a work. So,
true, Jack.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Lots of rumors flying around. The couple that came out first when it really started to come out about these AEW potential signings or the people that they wanted to bring into the place.
Overtures.
Yeah, there we go. Best way to describe it. You heard about the Revival. You've heard about Mike and Maria Kanellis. That's been rumored for at least a few weeks. Again, nothing can be confirmed there. The Revival have had a bit of a weird run lately. They're obviously getting more time. The whole tag team division is getting more time. A lot of that, again, ties back to AEW and the fact that they want to build a big tag team division there. WWE, obviously Vince wants to be the bigger man there and build a bigger tag team division. So, interested to see what happens there. But I thought it was really, really weird that they had Scott Dawson team up with Akam or was it Razar? Excuse me.
It was Akam.
Excuse me.
And then just have him
Akam.
team up with Dash Wilder the next night.
That's what confused me the most is again, you never
weird.
want to assume, but you sort of assume
reason.
there's an injury or something along those lines. I think they just wanted to give the AOP some TV time and keep them in the minds of people.
Yeah, but either way, it's an odd pairing.
Yep. I get where they come from in the way that people could view that as pushing the tag team division in the sense that you're getting as much or as many, people on TV as possible, getting them on a pay-per-view event as possible, but if you're going to build the Revival as a team, build the Revival as a team.
Help put Authors of Pain with Drake Maverick substituting in for Rizar. That would have been fantastic.
I don't disagree. Even just put that as a triple threat, whatever.
Would have been a smile on my face.
I agree. It would have given me a much bigger smile than the frowny face I saw in the mirror when I immediately stood up and went to use the washroom during that match. It's upsetting because they're all good wrestlers, but it's so frustrating to see something like that happen with. If you're going to do it, you got to build it. And they didn't build it. It was completely random. Dash was back the next night, which leads to no. Now, again, if something personal here happened with Dash Wilder, my apologies and hope all is well, sir. You don't ever want it to be a personal reason that somebody misses a show, and if that's the case, then be that as it may. But I thought it was a very odd/silly decision.
Yes. We're in the same boat in that one.
Yeah, so to go back to it. Sorry, you go ahead.
Well, no, and just, you suspect if it's a personal reason, they're going to be gone for longer. But once again, talking out of your ass here. Once again, like I thought on this week's edition of Monday Night Hayden, that they would have come and won an impromptu tag team title match. And that would have been a good way to transition the belt off.
Yeah.
But that's what just made it more surprising.
And transition, maybe transition, into a Revival AOP feud. Like, you could have gone so many ways from there.
Rizar is supposedly injured, which is why Akam's just
again, subbing Drake Maverick, whatever. Maybe you do it for a month, but you again start to highlight the tag team division, highlight more members in a way that to me makes more sense. Mike and Maria, haven't seen Mike Kanellis a ton. I don't watch 205 Live like on schedule. I'm a couple episodes behind right now. But Maria appeared in the Royal Rumble. She had a fairly good showing for someone who doesn't appear much.
True. She was in there for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Something like that. And Mike was on 205 this week.
Okay.
Yeah. And he lost to Kalisto.
Which, not everybody's going to win. But if you're on TV and you're getting time and
it's money.
Sort of getting that, to me, that's exactly it. I have never wrestled a day. I don't know what goes into the back end or booking or anything like that. So I'll always qualify that, take it for what it's worth. But like to me, if you make it onto TV, that's the least you can ask. At least if you're signed to a contract with WWE, I think is at least a semi-regular appearance.
But you're not going to get that. Like they got something like 268 signed wrestlers at this point.
100%.
Across all brands.
Yep.
I think. Including NXT UK.
And that's why perhaps you're starting to see people, I guess, at this level ask for a request to leave.
Absolutely.
And not that they were huge names. We'll get to them in a second. But the Revival, definitely you could make the argument that they were a huge name coming into the main roster. Maybe hasn't worked out the way that they would have liked or, frankly, any of us would have liked.
Well, in the same way as another guy, like I don't think that you mentioned Hideo Itami when you were talking about that list.
Nope, they were. He was coming up, but I'm happy to include him now.
Yeah,
Kenta.
But you can hold the same comparisons between the two of them.
Yep.
Not in their NXT careers, but between Hideo Itami's NXT career and the Revival's main roster career.
Yeah,
both came in with huge expectations, justifiably so. Both of them were immediately derailed by an injury, like less than a month in.
Yep.
Come back, do some great work, and then just derailed by injury again.
Yeah.
Like, it's just it's a shitty stick to be dealt, but it just happens, and that leads to understandable frustration. And like that's I don't want to say it justifies, because regardless, I don't like to see either the teams, or not teams, but either the talent, if you want to refer to them collectively as that,
Yep.
Walk out. But if it comes down to doing better work somewhere and being more fulfilled somewhere else, it's completely understandable.
It's 100%. It's 100% it. And again, none of these have really been confirmed. WWE has not officially said something on Hideo Itami. Kenta is his name on Twitter now, which was obviously his name prior to coming to WWE. Huge star coming into WWE.
The first real hottest free agent, if you want to be honest.
I could buy that. I guess of the new era. We weren't alive for the real Monday Night Wars.
Oh, but no, absolutely. With NXT.
100%. No, I know. I'm just making a point.
Just wanted to clarify.
I'm just clarifying, Hayden. I like to be clear.
I have 10 employees.
I drive a Dodge Stratus.
Do 100 push-ups in 10 minutes.
But I think you're completely right there. I think that he was even the first guy. You look at Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles as landmark signings. He was the first real guy I can remember making the jump over from Japan as a huge star. You know, a lot of people came over after spending time in Japan, but, you know, had to be built in WWE still. Whereas a lot of people, whether it be the smart fans or smart marks, I hate the phrase. Smarks. It's just such a weird word to say.
It's a stupid
I always think
term.
of Smuckers. I don't know why. It's just all... Either way.
Smuckers is delicious.
No, it's just the way you say the word. But I think that he was the first big signing coming in. Like you said, he was derailed by an injury. And the disappointing part is, to use the comparison to Paige, they were almost an incredible comeback story. Like in the sense that when Hideo Itami came back, it was huge. You know, I know he was back for that little bit and then got injured again, but I'm talking about when he came back and GTS Bobby Roode at the end of TakeOver.
It wasn't Aries, was it?
No, that was
it Roode?
That was a broken orbital bone. I'm positive it was Roode. Because he was the champion, and then that's when they went into their championship feud.
I'm just fact-checking, Spencer.
That's fine.
Not because I don't believe you, but just because I believe it was Austin Aries.
I know he did GTS Austin Aries, but I believe that was afterwards. Because I think he came straight back and GTS Bobby Roode after Bobby Roode beat... Who was it?
No,
I think it may have even been Nakamura.
Yeah, I believe it may have been.
After the rematch.
We'll know in about 3 seconds.
We will.
Continue with your point.
This is, it's times like this that I really appreciate Parker. Like, Win Column Sports senior analyst for NXT, just to give him the most official job title we can. Parker Love, where you can read his NXT previews every Wednesday on wincolumnsports.ca with no spoilers, as Hayden here fact checks. I give the cheap plugs. Hayden, I'm super excited. So we talk about Kenta. I just want to sort of go back here to the Revival, to Mike and Maria. I think that the Revival are inevitable to end up in AEW. I think that Mike and Maria are sort of more wild cards, to be honest with you, which makes it a little more interesting. And this is, to me, the first time as a fan we bring up WCW. This is the first time as a fan we really get to experience a Wild West. Because outside of a Blue Moon, it wasn't often that a star, when they were a free agent, chose to go somewhere other than WWE.
True. We count ourselves among them. There's an entire generation of wrestling fans that haven't experienced talent jumps.
Yeah.
And in any significant
pretty
capacity.
well, I would think anyone under 30, to be honest with you. Because if you were sort of like 10 or 11, like, you've got an idea of what's going on when you're watching wrestling at the peak of the Monday Night Wars.
True.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Was I right?
No, it was Aries.
It was Aries. Shit.
Yeah.
Well.
Suck it, Spencer. Take a drink.
Damn.
But even...
Curses.
Even what? WWE or WCW closed its doors in 99? Oh, no, 2001.
Yes.
Yeah. Bought out. And they had a huge influx of talent that came in, and they were all noted as being from WCW. Like, they had the WCW brand for a while. But even when it comes down to it, like, they sporadically mentioned that some signees were Ring of Honor champions later on in their careers when they were more established in WWE, but they never introduced somebody as, like, a former Ring of Honor champion. They just say a champion on the independents. And when guys like Christian went over to TNA, they just never acknowledged that. They just said that they were gone. Or
See,
they
with
had
me,
left WWE.
where I was going to say, what I would assume is, like, a lot of that with so you talked about Christian, I would assume that, like, TNA and that wouldn't have the licensing or whatever. Like, WWE could go after him and sue for mentioning their brand and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's the same reason WCW never directly infringed on, like, who the outsiders were.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that if WWE was to mention, he's a Ring of Honor champion, it's the same reason, and I hate it so much, but I understand it. It's the same reason that I understand why WWE makes fans remove AEW shirts.
Well, it's
100% get
it's
it.
their event.
100%. Mm-hmm. And why would you give? The biggest thing is from what I've heard, again, I don't like it. I would love to wear an AEW shirt to a WWE show, but to me, do you not expect, like, something? Like, number one, you know what you're doing when you go there. You 100% know what you're doing. Like, you're going in there and saying, guys, I'm going to be on the hard cam side wearing an AEW shirt. It's the same thing as those assholes who dress up like Randy Savage.
I know more about wrestling than you do.
I am wearing an AEW shirt. Let me be clear about
something.
Excuse me, sir, dressed as Hulk Hogan.
Do you know what this means?
Because there is the reputation.
It's like asking somebody, like, name 5 songs when they're wearing, like,
make them prove their fandom. It makes no sense to me, and I don't want to shit on wrestling fans, but, like, there is that reputation, and there are people who deserve that reputation. Like, I'm sure there are people going to that show.
We're not speaking generally. Yeah, we are speaking generalized to one group of fans.
100%.
Like, wear a Shane McMahon jersey.
100%.
Wear an AJ Styles shirt.
Like, cool people.
It's not hard.
Yeah, I just think that the biggest thing for me is, like, you don't want to give them genuinely free advertising. If AEW wants to go and hold an event the same day as SmackDown, that's enough publicity for them that they're doing that. WWE's not going to move SmackDown. Like, AEW's gotten, and I know that, you know, these guys know this. They know what they're doing in holding it on the same day as SmackDown. They're getting the press anyways. Like, why would you, as WWE, holding your live show, give them free advertising for something they've already gone and, like, sort of not stolen, but, like, they know what they're doing when they're scheduling that rally on that day.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best way possible. It was cool as shit that they did that.
They had that rally a couple years back as well, where Jimmy Jacobs got fired because of Fallout.
But and the selfie in that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely intentional.
Jimmy Jacobs, from what I've heard, just as a side note here, is a remarkable human being.
Yeah.
I guess that he came in on that CWE tour, that one that goes around the Alberta promotion, that brings in past stars and that sort of stuff. They brought in Brutus the Barber Beefcake a few months ago, and I went and saw him, and he didn't do anything cool at all, which was disappointing.
He's earned his golden years.
You know
at this point, he doesn't owe you anything, Spencer.
But you know what? Apparently, he was just not a very good person to deal with, so he left the tour early.
Oh.
Apparently, subject of much dispute, but Team Danny Duggan. And I think that Jimmy Jacobs, again, not fully sure on the story here, but apparently he previously worked CWE tours. So Danny contacted him to drive up to a show somewhere in Manitoba. I'm, again, not 100% certain on the story. Drive up to the show somewhere in Manitoba. Jimmy Jacobs literally, from what I've heard, got in his vehicle, drove up there, like basically said, if you tell me you need me there, I'll be there. He said, I need you there. Didn't ask any questions, got in the car, drove there with no service, and got there for the show that night. So, again, just a story, but there's my little appreciation shout out for Jimmy Jacobs.
To be perfectly honest, you gotta respect that. It's
right?
A bro move.
100%, man. So, now, the one thing I do want to touch on here is we finish off our big thought of the day on the pseudo return of the Monday Night Wars. The one big thing, and I think the biggest development thus far to have affected WWE, Dean Ambrose has, I guess, officially been announced to be leaving WWE at the end of April. Supposedly, this is at the end of his contract at the end of April. I'm going to qualify supposedly with all of this. What had been coming out earlier in that day, at least that's the first time I'd seen it, is a lot of sites were reporting that Jonathan Good, which is his real name, had turned down a contract offer from WWE that would see him pay X amount of dollars a year. Like we bring up we'll pay you double if you sign right now that we were talking about in the last OTTR. Apparently that was a semi-similar situation. Another guy, much like we were talking about with Kenta, that was just not satisfied with his creative direction. Direct quote I got, how true it is or not, is he doesn't like hokey shit.
Well, and he has been subjected
100%
to endless amounts of hokey shit.
100%.
Like a hot dog cart. That was a big part of him being a lunatic.
The asylum match
where they're saying that he's a huge lunatic, and then they just hang up like a mop
Yeah.
and a bucket around the side and a pot.
And I do want to say here, just to interject, it's not as though he hasn't put his best effort into that shit.
He's put 110%
to be quite honest
into
with
it.
you, like you see, and he gets a lot of flack, undeservedly, I think, for that appearance on the Stone Cold podcast a couple of years ago.
Where he just seemed disinterested.
Yeah, but I feel like
he's a private guy, it seems.
He's a private guy, again, from what it seems. And I would be talking about something disappointedly, too, if I felt that way about my Brock Lesnar match. Which for most people, is a star-making match at WrestleMania. Ambrose wants to go out of his way. And this isn't to fault Brock Lesnar. This isn't knowing what goes into backstage politics. But I fully understand why Ambrose would be dissatisfied with that match, especially given the amount of effort that he said he'd put into it, or wanted to put into it. So, yes, hokey shit, but yes, putting in a hell of an effort for it. So,
you look at it, he still remains, despite this incredibly botched heel turn, which still continues to deal in hokey shit. He continues to be one of the most bankable stars
100%.
Of this generation.
People still love him.
He's one of the three guys that they built as their pillars of this next generation. At least to carry them in that transition period until they found the new number one guy.
Yeah,
who ended up being Roman Reigns.
Yep, you couldn't have put it better if you tried, Hayden.
And like you think about it, when they knew that Roman wasn't getting hot enough, they paired him back with Dean. The same thing goes with Seth. When he was getting just mediocre reactions, they paired him up with Dean Ambrose, got him over again.
Yeah,
like they've leaned on him a number of times, and like he just continues to get dealt the shit under the stick.
The way people talk about Seth Rollins now is the way people were talking about Ambrose in 2016.
In that lead up to Mania,
in that lead up, what was the roadblock end of the line
against Triple
where
H?
He had the championship match against Triple H. I loved that match,
false
man.
finish.
I loved that match, and I think that they really failed to capitalize there, especially in the fact that, man, you could have, again, you talk about the things they could have done with Roman Reigns at the time, the things they could have done with a Roman Dean feud heading into Mania. You know, the way they fed into the booze with Roman Reigns in his later year with WWE, or his last little run here with WWE, like, the way they fed into his heel side was awesome. And if they would have done that going into a match with a hot Dean Ambrose heading into Mania, would have been awesome. Compared to the 45-minute classic we got.
And Mania 32 is one of the most shit Manias of all time.
100%. So,
like,
again,
what match was Ambrose in? Was that where he was facing
That was the Lesnar match.
Yeah, that was the Lesnar match. Pardon me.
Yep. So, I think that they, you talk about what could have happened, what they could have done. I think that this is the first real sign that the wrestling game is changing. I think that the Chris Jericho signing is huge. Chris Jericho was already a free agent. He already could have gone. Like, he works wherever he wants. I think that he's a more unique circumstance than a Dean Ambrose would be. He does as he pleases. He's already established. He works where he wants, when he wants, as is. Whereas Dean Ambrose is a guy who was contractually obliged And to me, if AEW doesn't exist, not saying he'll sign there or what his future holds, if AEW doesn't exist, I don't know if he makes this move.
From WWE to AEW?
No, like just leaving WWE, like
I got you.
Releasing his request. Now,
but he seems like not to be a judge of character, but just to be in the same vein as Chris Jericho, where he operates best when he's just doing what he's good at.
That's fair.
And,
like Cody.
Yeah, and like you consider him a lunatic. Like he wasn't just doing hokey shit. Like
Moxley is nuts.
Yeah, and he was. And aside from that, like he was just having insane matches. Yep. Like it's not all about his character for him.
That's fair, and it's not as though he's had bad matches. I was disappointed in that inaugural Seth Dean matchup for the Intercontinental Championship.
It was horrible.
And there are just bad matches, but everybody has bad matches in the same sense that we talk about that. Like, I wouldn't hesitate to say that is one of my favorite matches I've watched in the last 3 years. To be honest with you, 3-4 years. Like, I loved it. You bring up that false finish. Everything about it was great. From the fact that it did feel like, you talk about the feel of a show. You can only get so much from watching on the network, but like, just the feel of it, the toned down production, the fact that it just felt like a wrestling match.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, man, that's maybe just where Dean Ambrose or Jon Moxley is best. Right? So, my question to you, Hayden, before we take a quick break here on Over the Top Rope on Backbreaker Media, part of the Win Column Sports Network, and proudly sponsored by Beercade.
Sound like that girl from Office Space? Corporate accounts.
Corporate accounts payable. Linda speaking.
Nina speaking.
Nina speaking.
Yes.
Just a moment.
What was your question? Fire away.
Could this be a work?
Out of all of them, yeah. It seems the most likely. Just because they've been this forthright with it. It's so completely differently worded than any other release that you've ever read. And like you could argue that it's in anticipation of it. Not trying to necessarily cover it, but just trying to
soften the blow.
Yeah, and just make it known that he's going somewhere else, so they can dampen their surprise of him going to them. But it's been so oddly played. Like you hear rumors about it the night before or the morning of, and then something like 3 hours later they address it and they just completely cover it.
Yeah, it was odd to me that they used his name as. So they referenced his real name. That's why I said earlier in the show, Jonathan Good. They referenced his real name early, but then later on they go back into his kayfabe. We wish Dean all the best and hope that Dean returns to WWE one day. I don't know. Just given for me, there's a few reasons that I wouldn't think it's a work. There's a few, obviously, to think it's a work. It would be a very cool storyline. I really think it would be a cool storyline.
It seems eerily reminiscent of the CM Punk storyline before he walked out. Like, just on what's the word I'm looking for? Unemphatic elimination from the Royal Rumble. Just tossed out, not by nobody, necessarily. Like, Dean got thrown out by Aleister Black. Forget who Punk got tossed out by. Has one segment, loses their match. And then just Triple H comes out. They have, like, a war words with Triple H. And then they just both head to the back.
Yeah.
And then supposedly he's not going to be showing up anymore. Is that what we're supposed to be
I'm not sure. Is he? It'd be weird for me if he did appear. Now
we'll find out by next Monday.
Another reason for me that I think that it could be a work is, can you imagine the heat that he would be getting over the next couple months
for not showing up,
for going out and working and just being like, I've already quit. I'm not working. I'm done with this. Whatever. Like, you got to remember, he was sitting on Monday's Raw. Sitting in the middle of the ring, sitting in a chair, just starting before Nia Jax came out.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much of that, because it was the next morning that stuff starts coming out. Now, I will, it's not often I'll mention dirt sheets, but Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, like, he's pretty well the only guy I'll go to religiously as far as news goes, and like, it's the first guy to say, look, WWE emailed out that he was leaving. They basically, from what I remember of the couple tweets he sent out, the release that they sent to major media was essentially the same as the press release they sent out on WWE.com. he'd never seen that before. He's a guy like of any dirt sheet that I trust, it'd be him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like it'd be so weird for them to go out of their way to like work the media, it's so inconceivable that it's so Vince McMahon.
And like it may be a bit of a stretch, but I took a couple business courses as well. Even a bit of a business law course. And to think into the long term, like this is, as we mentioned, a legitimate main event star. A guy who has had at times like the highest selling merchandise.
A WWE champion.
And one of their forefront stars for this generation.
Yep.
And to think that wouldn't play into some stock confidence, into some consumer confidence, into consumer interest at the very least, as far as house shows go, as far as live events go as well.
Yeah.
Just for the sake that they wouldn't have him as a draw prospectively in the future. Like, I don't know. And as I said, it's a stretch, but it seems a bit odd.
And you hate looking at the situation in a business sense, but could you imagine losing one for sure, and for the foreseeable future, losing two members of the Shield and Ambrose just leaving WWE altogether and Roman Reigns? I hate touching on rumors on this one, but there are rumors like with the movie coming out, there were rumors of him coming out at 30 at the Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to speculate on it. So just for the indefinite future, a phrase I hate using, but having two members of the Shield just gone, which is, like you said, the thing they put the most stock into of anything in years.
Shawn Michaels stayed with the WWF the whole time, essentially, before his injury.
Yep.
Triple H was there the whole time, while Diesel and while Scott Hall went to WCW.
Outside of injuries.
It's not like it's unprecedented.
That's true, but you did have two members, and I would argue even at that point,
Undertaker stayed with WWF while Hulk Hogan went over.
100%.
Well, what's his nuts? While Sid went over, Randy Savage went over, $1 Million Man went over, Mean Gene Okerlund went over.
Everybody did, but the thing, even at that point, not to shit on WCW, but could you say any of those guys signed? Hulk Hogan, you can look at with revisionist history and be like, him signing with WCW and turning into the NWO was the best career decision he ever made. Did any of those guys leave WWE at the prime of their career?
How old was Hogan? I think he was like 39
he was
or 40.
Late 30s.
It's hilarious. I love the fact that WCW signed them regardless. Savage was like 36.
Yep.
One of the reasons he wanted to, or one of the primary reasons that he left, he didn't actually want to leave WWF, if my memory serves me right, was because he wanted to continue to wrestle, and just because he wasn't being made to wrestle in the WWF, he was just put into a commentator position.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like 36. Sid has always looked like a 60-year-old man.
He's a bad wrestler.
Yeah, he's like a 60-year-old man. The levels of over that guy got, though, is absolutely astounding, though.
You know,
watch some of his crowd reactions.
Talk about people who were over. They literally flew Lex Luger onto an aircraft carrier in an American flag
to
body slam Yokozuna
on a battleship.
Excuse me, not an aircraft carrier.
Oh, what you say? Oh no, same thing. Pardon me. I knew it was.
No, had two very different machines of war.
Well, both naval.
One carries aircraft.
Both naval vessels. On the 4th of July. Surrounded by Marines.
Dude, I love wrestling.
Highs and lows.
The thing is, no one else got flown in. I think that's the best part of it. It's just like, wait a minute.
Lex Luger.
I know who we can bring in for this one.
Why can't you run out, Lex? Have you just been hanging out in that helicopter the whole time, monitoring the situation?
Hey, we need you to fly. Start the helicopter in 6 minutes.
Hey, if you need me, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to be here.
Hey, Lex, no one else could body slam this guy, so
heli
if you
fishing.
could fly... Heli fishing is one of those things that only the top 0.1% of people will ever do, and man, that is the stupidest shit.
I was just thinking about it from an absurdly high distance.
No, I know. Just throwing a very long fishing line. What happens if you get a bite?
That's just a huge workout. Lex Luger was huge back in the day.
It's a huge workout. I'm just thinking, like, what if you're fishing with your legs off the side of the chopper?
Oh, God.
Just go down. So, excuse me, Dean Ambrose. Because we got to take a quick break here before we do our good housekeeping at the end of this one, my friend.
True.
I think that this is the first time, at least in my recent memory, that someone of this level has left at the prime of their career for so many options. Cody was the guy.
Brock Lesnar.
Lesnar didn't. Yeah, but you know what, Lesnar? And you brought this up earlier, and it's something I just want to touch on real quick. But like people using WWE as a launching point rather than because they love wrestling. So I think that Lesnar, you bring up his opportunities. A lot of his opportunities weren't immediately in wrestling.
Yeah.
Like he left because he wanted to go to the Minnesota Vikings, not because he wanted to go to New Japan. Right? Whereas Dean Ambrose leaves because he's dissatisfied with his creative direction, at least purportedly, dissatisfied with his creative direction, has a multitude of high to equally paying wrestling jobs available. He's a hot commodity. And for me, to answer the question from the start of this before we wrap her up, yes, I think that he is the first real example that the Monday Night Wars are back.
I'll see that. Absolutely.
Do you believe that?
Ooh,
Perfect. Well, when we come back on this week's edition of Over the Top Rope, there's some good housekeeping to take care of, as we usually do with our last couple minutes here on Over the Top Rope. With Royal Rumble weekend, lots to touch on, lots from the wrestling world. So while we want to get through it quickly, we want to get through it. After this commercial from our friends at the Backbreaker Media Network, Chris Parrish and Maniac of Tag Struggle and the Sounds of Struggle on Backbreaker Media.
On the Column Sports Network.
It's Over the Top Rope.
If you like podcasts and you are listening to on Backbreaker Media, then you should listen to me, Chris Parrish,
and myself, Maniac,
and the Sounds of Struggle, because we are literally the most entertaining duo you'll ever come across in Western Canadian wrestling, baby.
We talk about things like wrestling
and other sports we like.
Wrestling.
But we won't talk about other sports that we don't like because it's not that kind of podcast.
Like wrestling.
I mean, we like hockey.
And wrestling.
And we like football.
And wrestling.
And we also like to drink beer.
While wrestling.
Well, not while wrestling, but while watching wrestling.
Yes.
Yeah. If you want to get into a conversation with Maniac and Chris Parrish, then you need to tune into the Sounds of Struggle live on Backbreaker Media.
Every Thursday.
That's when we hope to drop, but sometimes Mike Malawany doesn't do his job right.
Or we're too drunk to forget.
Yeah, that happens too.
Yeah.
He can bleep out the swear word because we weren't supposed to do that.
Oh,
but
I'll try not to swear. I can't do it.
Yeah. Let's face it, the two of us, we're real.
And spectacular.
And we're a little bit of all right.
Yeah.
We're also strugglicious.
That we are.
That was kind of the key. We're supposed to be strugglicious.
Oh, sorry, I'm drunk.
Yeah. So, if you don't want to listen to us, then no. You're stupid because we're entertaining. And if you want to listen to us, then come listen to us on Backbreaker Media.
Yeah.
Later,
he said.
Later, bitches.
Welcome back to Over the Top Rope on Backbreaker Media, proud member of the Column Sports Network, and proudly sponsored by Beercade YEG. So don't forget, head to Beercade YEG on 106th Street and 82nd Ave, White Avenue in Edmonton, Alberta. Prior to every WWE pay-per-view, Hayden and I, your brothers of discussion and the hosts of Over the Top Rope, will be hosting Over the Top Rope Live, previewing every pay-per-view, giving you the breaking news, and giving you reviews of the show to be, and then watching the pay-per-view and just enjoying $4 beers at the fine establishment of Beercade, playing some arcade games, and getting to know the fine staff members that work there.
I was going to say, Spence, you can catch us there more than
Yeah,
once a
we're
week.
definitely there
Or
more
once a
often than
month.
that, but we don't often want to advertise.
It's a lot of fun just hanging out, playing some arcade games, and sampling their wide variety of beers.
Absolutely, man. And a lot of members of the Edmonton independent wrestling community, I know there have been talks of ticket giveaways, that sort of thing.
you gotta wonder what'll happen if you show up.
100%, and much like ourselves, Hayden, they just take care of business, and that is what we are here to do in this segment, which we are entitling Good Housekeeping. After the last edition of Over the Top Rope, just a couple quick things to give our thoughts on in the world of wrestling. Hayden, first of all, Royal Rumble weekend. We have NXT TakeOver Phoenix, another outstanding show from the Black and Yellow brand. And the Royal Rumble, just to touch on quickly, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, the man. Your Royal Rumble winners for the years. First off, your matches of the night, both for TakeOver Phoenix and for the Royal Rumble.
TakeOver Phoenix, I had to go for the tag match. Absolutely star-making match for hands in a row. And just another solid performance from O'Reilly and Strong. Like, holy shit. Like, everybody
outstanding.
Everybody was justifiably hyped on Redragon coming in.
Yep.
But the team that they put together after Fish went out, that was just phenomenal, man. And they proved it again tonight. So that's it for the TakeOver. As for the main roster match, it's difficult to call, but I'll just go ahead and I'll say the main roster men's Royal Rumble match. Just always,
the men's?
Yeah.
I thought the women's was better, to be honest with you. I thought it was better pace.
Well, that's your damn pick, Spencer.
Thank you, man. Sorry, that's fair. Your opinion can't be wrong.
Absolutely. And I don't know. It's just always a solid bet. Didn't really enjoy any of the singles matches. None of them really stood out to me. But if I had to pick something aside from the Rumble match, I'd say Shane McMahon and the Miz versus
the best tag team in the world.
Absolutely, best tag team in the world.
All
Absolutely.
right.
And your picks?
You know, it speaks to how good TakeOver was that I would probably not have picked the tag team match without you mentioning it. However, I would still pick Johnny Gargano versus Ricochet. What an incredible match. I think we've got an early contender for match of the year, a strong contender for match of the year. As far as the Rumble, my favorite pay-per-view of the year every year, I've got to give the Rumble match to the women's this year. It was a fantastic match. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the way that they brought Becky Lynch back into it, to be honest with you. And I thoroughly enjoyed Lesnar versus Balor. The only thing I didn't enjoy was the fact that they made Balor tap clean. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I thought it was a fantastic match. Now, moving on from there, I thought Raw was fine. There's no real other way to put it. The segments I loved on both Raw and SmackDown involved, as has been for the last number of months, the man, Becky Lynch. Let's touch on Becky Ronda right now. Hayden, do you think that this one's going to main event WrestleMania?
I can't say for certain.
Well, yeah, I know, but
I'm sorry that I stuttered there. But I mean, you're pitting two of the hardest starters in company with Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey against two of Vince's boys, in Brock Lesnar and in Seth Rollins.
I don't really know if Rollins is Vince's boy, though. Vince is firmly a Triple H guy. Apparently, that is a Triple H decision to have him be the guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
operating through him. Either way, if he's Triple H's guy, then to some extent that infers that he's Vince's guy. It's not like he's going to have the go-ahead from both, from just one of them, without having the permission to go ahead.
That's fair. Vince has final say. But I think that if you're going to do it, this is the year to do it. You're not going to catch lightning in a bottle like you have Becky Lynch in a long time, I think. Like, you talk about gimmicks that have gotten over in the last few years. Even ironically over, like Rusev Day was the hottest shit. I think that Becky Lynch far eclipses that. You know, I don't think there has been a run like this in, like, Summer of Punk.
Or Curtis Axel.
Of course.
After he debuted.
Rybaxel.
Yeah, true. Him beating Triple H on Raw.
Excellent run. Was really disappointed not to see Ryback Reeves in the Rumble.
That's a damn shame, but you never know. Might happen next year.
2020.
Absolutely.
Maybe he shows up in the Elimination Chamber.
But either way, that's going against two of the top male stars in the company.
I really hope he doesn't show up in the Elimination Chamber. I just have to qualify that. I really hope Ryback doesn't show up there.
I think that's about as far out of left field as you can get.
100%. I just think it has to be, I feel like it's like, you know, when you make a wish and it happens. I just wanted to, like, get rid of that one. Sorry, two of the top male stars in the company.
And with the top belts in the company, regardless of what you want to say about the Women's Championship. And if you think that Lesnar's not going to come out to an event like well, no, and he has in the past. I'm biting my tongue before I even say that. But like I was going to say, he wouldn't come out and not wrestle in the main event, but he has done precisely that for like the past 4 WrestleManias.
Numbers of years.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and kick myself in the balls for that.
That's fair.
Sorry.
That's okay. You know, I think that if you're going to do it, this is not to say that you shouldn't, if you don't do it this year, don't ever do it. But I think that if you're going to do it for a first time ever, you've built something this great organically. Becky Lynch has gotten this over completely organically. I feel like it would be a bit of a slap in the face. Even if you were to do this event and include Charlotte Flair, I think that would be a silly decision now at this point. I think now you have to do Charlotte Asuka too and give two not just great women's matches, but top-notch women's matches at WrestleMania.
I completely agree. And from each brand as well.
100%. So I think you're going to see Charlotte Flair versus Asuka for the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. You're also going to see Becky versus Ronda. Two excellent matches, two right decisions. Moving on, Hayden. Next thing I've got, I'm going to kick this one off about Daniel Bryan and Rowan. I am so very excited about what I am now calling Pearl Jam.
There are a lot of names floating around to them, but
Nirvana, the Stone Temple Pilots. Sorry, that was a bad joke.
Jesus.
I know, that was really bad. Either way, the couple things I wanted to say about Daniel Bryan and Rowan, the first thing I wanted to bring up about Eric Rowan was when he enters, he has, if you'll notice, in Rowan, the O is now one of the classic recycling symbols, and I love it. I think that is an absolutely excellent touch. It's all about the small things. It's a very random pairing as is. I still don't even know how I feel about the pairing as a whole, but if you're going to commit, screw it, commit. And Rowan committed. He's a champion of the environment now. Daniel Bryan's intellectual peer, featuring a recycling logo as a logo in his name.
Maybe he's just playing a character that's authentic to himself.
Maybe he's going to turn heel and just truly hate the environment.
Oh, man. You can't.
Isn't that
the
weirdest
I'm plugging
thing?
my ears at this point.
Isn't
That's
that just
disgusting.
the weirdest thing, Hayden? Is they're the heels in this, and Rowan's one of his biggest changes is he now loves to recycle.
Yeah.
Think about what that says about that company as a whole.
It's that they look down upon you for not recycling.
Yeah.
And to people in general for not recycling. Which
And
is
Daniel Bryan is the checks notes.
If
bad
you're
guy.
able to place yourself in their shoes, then you understand their motivations. But it's never a good feeling to be looked down upon by Big Red Eric Rowan and Daniel Bryan.
Especially Big Red Eric Rowan. The other thing I loved, and the thing that Eric Rowan's purpose was served best, was carrying out the brand new WWE Championship belt. I love it as well. Daniel Bryan is one of the best wrestlers of all time.
What, he's only
Comfortable saying it. Love it. This is just genius.
One of 3 wrestlers to get their custom belt and actually use it on TV.
Be allowed to utilize it.
Yeah. Edge
Not
with the
only
spinning
that, but
arm
get a
belt.
huge debut for it.
Stone Cold with the with this smoking skull.
Yeah.
Yep. I was gonna say the Brahma Bull, but that
And
was never used.
it's very, very not controversial in a bad way. I see it on Twitter and that sort of stuff that it is a controversially designed belt. I love it. I think
it's
for
better
what
than
it
I
is,
thought it was gonna
it's a
be.
I'd order one. I would order one if they had them on the WWE shop.
I'm certain that they will at some point.
I will buy one. I am banking on that one. I need to order one as is. Hey,
I wonder
friends
how
out
much
there
it
on the
would
internet,
cost.
if you guys ever want to order a championship belt for me because I can't afford one, there you go.
Or just make one.
I can't. I don't have the carpentry skills nor the steady hands.
It's not made of wood. It's made out of hemp and pebbles and twine. And
I feel like the backing is... He said it was made of naturally fallen oak.
Oh,
I think that's what the side plate and...
that's stupid. Like the lumber industry actually more or less, well, it contributes to the environment. Pardon me, I was going to say it takes away from forest fires. But forest fires do contribute to the environment as well.
Everything is...
Naturally fallen trees.
Everything is screwed up always, everywhere. Hayden.
Yes.
I think that's just the way that life can be described. That may be the title of my book, to be honest with you.
It's weird to think that
Life is always bad everywhere at all times.
somewhere around the world right now, there's just a huge fire happening, and we don't know that it's happening.
Isn't it? That is the most dark thing I think we've said on this show.
Nobody's being injured. It could just be
Somewhere-
a big fire.
Somewhere, somehow, someone is having the saddest moment of their life right now.
It's not what I inferred.
And we're chatting wrestling, Hayden.
Yes. But as we do, my biggest question coming out of this was, do you see an expansion of this stable?
I do. I think that it's been teased a little bit in a way that only he would tease it, but it seems as though Bray Wyatt is teasing a return on SmackDown. And like there's been a couple tweets coming out of him with the Wyatt family, or excuse me, not him, Daniel Bryan with the Wyatt family. He sent out a poem that seemed to infer that he was coming back to come after it. It's all very Bray Wyatt-esque, man. I sound like an idiot describing it, so I will refrain from doing so as is. But
so now that you bring it up, maybe when Harper returns, he pairs up with Bryan.
Harper's cleared. Harper's been cleared for a while. Wasn't he just in an NXT house show a few weeks ago?
I don't think a few weeks
that
ago.
may have even been before he was injured, but he's been cleared since,
yeah.
I believe.
I think he was cleared just to roll around, but I don't think he was fully medically cleared.
Sentences like that, I love wrestling.
Yes.
He's been cleared just to, roll around in a bit of a pit.
I really wanted to roll. Yeah.
Sorry, Luke. You're only able to tumble now. You can't do a full roll. You can tumble a bit.
Try one. See how it feels.
Speaking of recently cleared, this is a quick aside. That new moonsault double knees from Alexa Bliss is sick.
Yeah.
That was sick.
She's doing a lot of acrobatic moves. She's apparently as athletic as Casey Catanzaro.
She's a tweener now by any stretch of the imagination at worst. That moment of bliss can also almost, be seen as a bit of a face turn.
She got bullied by the lady of NXT, who I was actually surprised by in the Women's Royal Rumble.
Very, very solid.
I thought she was
got a huge shine, man.
I thought she was way bigger. I thought she was 6 feet tall. But she's just an incredibly jacked ex-Marine.
Yeah. Man, she is a monster.
Yeah.
You notice it on NXT too. It's just the fact that in a very different way, Shayna Baszler is also a monster. And when that's your standard bearer, other than Nia Jax, who is treated as an outlier, Shayna Baszler is such a mean individual. We haven't seen... Nia Jax, I feel differently about just because you do see, the behind-the-scenes stuff with her. There was a storyline going up to WrestleMania. She's had a face run in WWE. Shayna Baszler never has, so I'm much, much more scared of her. I'm sure she's a nice person.
Tamina
Snuka. That's fair. She's never really had a face run either.
That's true. It's impossible, just because she's so great at being a heel.
100%. Yeah. She's a terrorizing force.
Yep, scariest woman in WWE.
Speaking of scary, Rusev and Elias, two now scary individuals again.
Oh, he scared me.
Right? Huh?
I'm scared.
I'm startled. I'm so startled.
Yeah.
After their recent dumb turns. I think they were dumb. Is it just me? I only want to touch on this quickly because they were very underplayed on WWE, but I feel like if you're going to execute a heel or face turn, you've got to at least give it a bit of build. Now, you may see something come out of it next week in their match with the Good Brothers, but Rusev turning heel and siding with Shinsuke Nakamura is so forced.
Yeah.
So forced.
Even
outside of the R-Truth being United States champion, because you know what for whatever it's worth there, R-Truth is over. And not that Rusev isn't, and not that Shinsuke Nakamura, he's not as over as he should be, but he's still over.
No, he's as over as he should be. He does shit all.
Sorry, you know what? I guess where I think he should be, I think he should be...
Not as over as he could be.
There we go. Thank you, Hayden. That's a much better way of putting it. But I think that this is going to be a good pairing. I think it's just odd, especially in Rusev's case. Elias, I could see coming back to a heel turn because he's been nowhere near as strong as a face as he was as a heel.
And with Ambrose's rumored departure, they need another top heel.
I wonder if he's going to appear, man. I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. But with Rusev and Shinsuke, the thing is, I can't say it's not the last thing that you'd expect, but I just never thought about it. Just because it was never that type of rivalry. It just felt like another feud. It wasn't maybe... it wasn't like Sheamus and Cesaro's best out of 7 matchup, where
with clear storyline, you can build respect for each other. There's a way out of it, almost. I think that it was a very forced way out of it with R-Truth.
And they hit a stalemate, and they go to a bar and they team up and shit like that. And that's why they're also called the Bar.
Yep.
Not just because they set the bar, but also because they got into a huge bar fight.
I think
So
I
think about
remember
it.
the entire run of the bar. They are now,
One of
one of my
the-
favorite things in hockey is like trade trees.
Yeah.
So like when the Oilers traded Wayne Gretzky, like where that eventually goes, this player, yada yada yada. Like I feel like the bar is the longest lasting iteration of things or something invented during the tenure of Mick Foley as GM. Like they are the last remnant of Mick Foley's run as general manager.
True.
We miss you, Mick. Come back.
He did a great job. Can't say that he didn't do anything. That's for certain.
No, he did. Like they're a great tag.
One of the best I've seen throughout my entire time watching.
They're excellent together too. Like Cesaro, don't get me wrong. I think that dude needs a solid singles run at some point, but you cannot deny that guy is an incredible tag team wrestler.
He is. I guess it's a paradox, but he is both a tag team and a singles specialist. He's just so fucking talented.
I 100% get what you mean, man. He is incredible. The thing that is there's two ways of looking at it. Is he could go on. He could be a guy who I think could be a world champion at some point, but he could also be another guy who could realistically get lost in the shuffle in WWE just because there are a lot, not to take away from Cesaro, but to put over the entire roster right now. It's the most talented roster of all time. It just
absolutely.
It
and
is.
SmackDown especially. We talked about this during
Months ago, man.
And we talked about this during our last live podcast at Beercade, located on 82nd Avenue
And 106th
106th
Street.
Yeah, great time.
Great time.
But you make a fair point. Like it's entirely possible. But I don't think he's at a main event level status yet. But I think that he's just become universally respected amongst people, even casual fans.
Yep.
Like there was a year stint where he was getting Cesaro sections that appeared naturally first.
Yep.
And then people started banking on it. Like even the Squared Circle subreddit is the one that started that, to my knowledge. Is like
really?
one guy actually printed off like Cesaro section pages and was just handing them out to people.
Awesome.
Yeah, and they held them up voluntarily.
Very cool.
So he's sort of at that level. Sheamus is a multi-time WWE champion. Both of them they certainly wouldn't be used, but you do make a fair point. Like right now, they're the focus of the tag team division.
At this point, their breakup for me, if it's built right, like any match, I think they could be a singles match on a WrestleMania card. I'd have no issue with it.
Yeah.
I'd have no issue with Sheamus versus Cesaro, and like not as a main event match, just because there's wrestlers I personally enjoy more. But I would have no issue with them being on a WrestleMania main card as a singles match at this point.
They teased it earlier.
And that is a credit to how great their run as a tag team has been.
Yeah.
But
even with the Big Show.
Yep. Man, that's just, I loved it. But either way, there's an oddly paired tag team that works. I think that Shinsuke and Rusev may not work as well, not due to anything on their end. I think due to the lack of a cool build like the bar got. Elias, it's going to work perfectly. The guy's a great heel. He's got the longest boo I've heard in years out of a crowd. So we'll take that. Last but not least, before we close out this here edition of Over the Top Rope on Backbreaker Media, we're a proud member of Wincombe Sports. Ember Moon is now on the injured reserve. She's out for an indefinite period for elbow surgery, I believe.
And it's supposedly a very, very extensive surgery. So she's gone for a while.
Yep. Which is unfortunate, man, because, like, she is someone that I think it was around the Evolution pay-per-view. I was talking to KJ and Mike about this, of Backbreaker Media as well. That I thought that Ember Moon could have been someone perfectly tuned to win the Evolution Battle Royal, to face off with Ronda Rousey, because she's someone who could take a loss and be hugely elevated by a Rousey match, whereas we'd already seen Nia Jax. You know?
Yeah, I was racking my brain trying to remember, but then I just remembered it was Jax.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people considered that, but that would have been an excellent launching off point.
Thought it would have been very, very cool for her. And not that she hadn't, like, proverbially hit her stride in the ring. Excellent wrestler. I think that she was finally starting to hit her stride as far as being, like, a featured and promoted talent. So, unfortunate on that end, and unfortunate, Hayden, that we have to close this week's edition of Over the Top Rope. Once again, man, it's been a blast. I thoroughly enjoy these.
It's always a new experience.
We always have fun. We always find new stuff to talk about. There's always new information that both you and I come across.
And there's always something new that we learn about each other.
I
And
love it,
maybe
man.
about ourselves.
Man, we're getting emotional to end this podcast.
Hey, how else would we end it?
100%, man. I always appreciate it. Thank you, friends, for listening to this edition of Over the Top Rope. As we appreciate Hayden being on here, we appreciate you guys listening. Don't forget, you guys can subscribe to Backbreaker Media or the Win Column Sports Network pretty well anywhere you can find podcasts. Just look up one of those two names. If you're also looking for us anywhere else, it's Backbreaker Media on Twitter. We're Canadian, so we don't need it at the end of the Twitter handle. You can also find us at WC Sports CA. Myself and Hayden have our own personal Twitter accounts. Mine is SpennyLove_WCS. I love wrestling. Come talk to me. Come talk to Hayden at HLoveMillionaire with no E, both great life advice and the way to spell his Twitter handle.
Yeah, no we.
No E. Once again, this has been Over the Top Rope on the Backbreaker Media Network, a part of the Win Column Sports Network, proudly sponsored by Beercade YEG. So go to Backbreaker, go to Win Column Sports for all your previews, reviews, and breaking news.
Go to Podbean. Check it out. A lot of great podcasts.
A lot of great podcasts, man. There's a lot we listen to, even just outside of great podcasts like Total Nonstop Anarchy, Quick Calls, the former Double Down, all of them on the Backbreaker Media Network. We love the Smart to Death podcast. We love the Visionaries Wrestling Network.
Yeah, Two Big Tams.
The Two Big Tams podcast, excellent podcast featuring the greatest story from Bryce the Slammer Sova you will ever hear. However, we will not repeat it on here because, we curse occasionally on here. That is something that is just firmly fit for an explicit rating.
Children hear their parents curse all the time. What excuse do we not have to curse?
A very good one. We both work in jobs where we're in the public eye,
Yes.
at least sparingly.
Yeah.
When people are asking us,
when I tell a kid to F off, it's not because I'm trying to be mean to him. It's because I'm trying to expose him to the dangers of the real world.
oh, come on.
Not
Man.
everybody's going to help you.
Either way, thank you folks for listening to this week's edition of Over the Top Rope on the Backbreaker Media Network. Proud members of Win Column Sports, proudly sponsored by Beercade. We'll see you at the next pay-per-view or next week when you tune in.